Hi everybody, I'm Pat Jones. I'm with Golf Course Industry Magazine, and I'm here to help lead a little bit of a discussion about agronomic issues in California. And it all goes back to water, and we'll talk a lot about that, but it also goes back to what kinds of decisions you're going to make based on water issues and soil issues and everything else to try to manage your disease problems. So I'm fortunate that I have three experts here, so I don't have to talk because I'm an English major and I don't know anything about it. So I'm just here to ask questions. And fortunately, I have three experts here. So I want each of you to introduce yourself a little bit and tell everybody your stake in this matter and who you are, and then we'll have a little conversation about this. So Jim, go ahead.
Morning, Pat. Morning, everyone. I'm Jim Baird. I'm the turfgrass specialist at the University of California, Riverside, about an hour and a half drive up the road from San Diego. Happy to be here.
Josh?
I'm Josh Lewis, golf course superintendent at Sharon Heights Golf and Country Club, and also happy to be here since my job kind of counts on a lot of this stuff. So.
And Jen?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jen Browning, Technical Service for BASF, and I have the Western region, and my stake is to be here and learn from the experts so that we can develop products that serve the industry based on their recommendations. Very glad you could all make it this morning.
Just tell us briefly about your role on a day-to-day basis. Are you a consultative person working with your clients around the area? What's your specific role with BASF?
That is a great question. So for technical service, one of the things that we do is product stewardship for products that are already labeled and are in use. Right. And then the other thing that we do is we work to develop new products and steward those out into the marketplace and fit them into programs based on things like the research that Jim develops to show the best management practices to manage difficult diseases, water problems, and all of the various challenges of growing great turf grass.
Okay. Characterize, if you can, just generally, as you look north and south, and we all know California is like 7 different states packed into one big package, but as you look throughout the state, what are the most common issues impacting golf courses today? And I think one of them probably begins with the letter W, but what are the things that you get the most questions about and have the most discussions with superintendents about?
Well, I think obviously the main issue is water or lack thereof. I know it's kind of hard to envision that this week with the kind of rainfall we've had, but typically rainfall is few and far between in California, so courses are running out of availability in terms of water. We've been through our fair share of droughts, so that's certainly been an issue. I guess along with the water issue is the fact that we have a really good environment for poa annua. I mean, we certainly do our part in terms of trying to help superintendents perhaps eradicate that, but by and large, it's still a challenge in terms of it's here to stay for the most part, at least on a lot of golf courses. So then the challenge becomes in terms of keeping it alive. And so even though we're a little drier, maybe less humid overall than other parts of the country, we still have our challenges with that, with maintaining that species on a high level.
And then there's also this issue of the quality of the water you have, which has a big impact on not only on the turf and the soils, but in mixing products and things like that too. So maybe we'll come back and revisit that in a second. Josh, you came down here from the Seattle area, from up in Washington, Tacoma, I guess technically. And what was that change like for you? Because that was a crazy environment, and obviously you went through a major championship and all that, and you came down here. What did you find, and how did you have to adapt and learn in this new environment here?
Well, that was probably one of the main reasons I wanted to come back here, because I felt like growing grass in the Northwest, although it's got very specific challenges, one of the things we don't struggle with is availability of water or water quality.
Clearly not.
So
right.
My soils knowledge was decent, but not great. And so coming down here, understanding that not only is availability an issue with periodic droughts and things like that, and I think we went 230 days in a row last year or this last season without rain. But the quality is also an issue. So your irrigation water, things like that, as aquifers get depleted, if you're on groundwater, those levels of certain things, bicarbonate, sodium, things like that will change throughout the year. So seasonal adaptation as you go through the year is important.
How does that manifest itself in your program? What are you specifically doing as the water quality shifts?
Well, so we'll start flushing programs in about June, where we'll run 90 minutes with part circle heads in combination with penetrants and calcium products and things like that, just to try to manage those soil colloids, get things to knock off, get replaced by positive nutrients, things like that. But in addition, we have to focus with Poania greens on rapid blight as a big issue. As bicarbonate levels, sodium levels come up, rapid blight becomes a major issue.
And that's sort of your number one thing that you're focusing with your spray program?
With POA in our region, that's what we kind of build our program around.
What are some of the other things that you're also focusing on?
Anthracnose, summer patch, a little bit of pythium depending on humidity levels, things like that, but primarily rapid blight.
And if you get the rapid blight, you're going to get a lot of the rest of that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the same with anthracnose. As we weaken the turf stand, whether it's short roots in wet environments, high bicarbonate levels, high sodium levels, we'll see rapid blight, but we'll also start to see anthracnose because it's a secondary pathogen.
Right. Jen, is that typical of a lot of the customers that you're working with? Is that sort of feel like, and again, California's this giant place with all these different issues, but is that typically what you hear, or are there other variations on that with programs?
There's some variations in terms of with rapid blight specifically, when do they start to see pressure in the beginning of the year? I just learned yesterday that some customers will see it as early as March, and it can continue on through the summer and out into the very early parts of the fall, which I did not know that when I first started working with rapid blight. And the thing that's difficult is that when you're looking at chemistries that are going to pick up that particular disease, but you're also limited with good practices to only make a certain number of applications within an efficacious mode of action, it becomes a bit of a challenge. So the variations on those kinds of issues that we see playing out with rapid blight and also with anthracnose are the length of the season and how bad is their pressure. Because for some people, rapid blight is temporary and they see it for a short period of time in the very hot period of summer, and then for other people it's going to really dictate their entire year's program, because their season is so long.
So I know there's never a typical program, but what are you recommending to people like Josh and who that's their primary concern? What kind of a combination of products and programmatic stuff are you recommending?
So one of the things that we recommend is a foundation that's built around Insignia, because Insignia is efficacious on rapid blight, and we've seen that over and over again in trials throughout the West. But then we also know that, like Josh said, with the secondary pathogens and the other things that happen, anthracnose, summer patch, we have to steward those stromal urine applications because you only get so many per year, and you still have to address all of the disease pressure that you have on the shoulders of the seasons. So in the spring and in the fall, and for those unlucky folks who have disease in the winter, we're trying to fit that strobe in where it's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting on a detrimental disease, and also have good chemistries for the rest of the year to protect
without
against
over-relying on the strobe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We were talking about this earlier. How much do you wake up thinking about resistance management strategies every day? And like, for example, I think a lot of us are kind of familiar with the term frac, the frac rating. Is that something you think about?
Yeah, definitely. I think, with the great products that are out there, and frankly, for rapid blight, we're limited.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of great products that tackle that. So, like, I build my program specifically around like a holiday spray program with Lexicon, because it's a broader range situation. So that'll help cover me for a multitude of diseases, but it also has the Insignia backbone for the rapid blight. But what that generally does is it really limits my ability to use the strobies in the winter seasons when I'm looking at microdochium patch and things like that, as well as coming into like Whitea season and things like that in the spring. So as I'm thinking about my strobe use, I'm generally saving that for summer when it's hot. It's, that's when our real disease period is. The microdochium's a little easier to control here than it is in the Northwest.
So you pull the trigger in July Yeah,
I generally will start with like a Memorial Day spray, and then space that out Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, and then that obviously that period between 4th of July and Labor Day is a little longer, so I'll throw something else, a different chemistry in there, one of the safer DMIs generally, And then my winter program is built more around the DMIs for microdocium control.
And that's been a big issue around here lately, as I understand it. Yeah, I've seen some pictures. It's horrible. Does that reflect what you're generally talking about when you're in your extension role and trying to help other superintendents? Is that the kind of program, and how much are you counseling people about resistance management?
Well, certainly one of the roles we try to provide for our industry, and specifically the golf course superintendents, is to evaluate pesticides. I think for those maybe outside of California don't realize that to register a product in California requires California data. So we're never for a loss of business.
Right.
And so we look at obviously looking at products, and it was mentioned earlier that Paraclistrovin has been the go-to fungicide for rapid blight, and you never want to depend on one product, one active ingredient. Obviously that it usually ends up with resistance issues. So
what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, so we've been active in terms of trying to identify other products, but along with that, just other strategies to manage the disease that are non-fungicidal.
So what are some of those? What are some things you're recommending besides the standard spray programs?
Well, I think every superintendent who's managing that disease is looking at. Leaching is a part of the program. Trying to move salts down into the root zone or further into the root zone, so it's less of an issue. One of the things we've also been looking at is just other products that are not necessarily considered fungicides that perhaps could be effective against that pathogen, and some interesting things that have come out. Not just maybe products that are maybe going to kind of help mitigate the chemistry aspect of salinity management, but I think some of the interesting work lately has been with nutrients and more specifically biostimulants and their effect on managing turf under saline conditions. And we've actually found over about 3 or 4 or 5 years of research that there's something going on there with these products, and more recently we've tried to kind of isolate that aspect, take it away from maybe the products that
it's always hard
change the
to
chemistry,
isolate
so to
that particular thing.
Right, but there's definitely a role that these products are playing, and quite honestly, in the past I've probably not been one of those people on the biostimulant bandwagon, but there's definitely something going on in this particular situation with salinity management.
That's fascinating. We talked a little bit earlier. The other thing you have to be concerned about is what water you're putting in your spray tank and how that's going to impact things. So what's your concern going to be there? Is it going to be heavy metals, salts, pH? What are you typically seeing when you see people have trouble with spray programs and it turns out to be water related? What are those problems?
Personally, I haven't encountered too many of those issues. I know some golf courses that I do work with have to actually treat their water that goes in the tank because of alkalinity issues. And
Jen, maybe you could speak to this. Is that something you find sometimes and you can help people correct?
Yeah, it's usually trying to figure out how to leverage what they have available in terms of water and then also labor. Mm-hmm. And so for some people, they may have an abundance of water, but it has a very high EC, and so they're having to do pre-treatments before they can put it in the tank. But meanwhile, with irrigation, it's exacerbating any disease pressure that they have, and so they're having to change their spray programs. They're looking at biostimulants. They're looking at changing up the fungicides that they use in their fertilization schedule. And so to the degree that we can, we try to weigh in on making recommendations so that they're able to work within the parameters that they have.
Right. Does that ring true, Josh? Is that what you say?
Yeah, I think as it relates to like the water we mix with our sprays, that's a relatively new thing for a lot of people. But when you look at a water test, even our potable water can have pHs in the 8.2, 8.3 range.
Right.
Well,
and everybody knows when you read an MSDS, there are pH levels recommended for each of those products. And you kind of have to dig through the paperwork to find them sometimes, but it's really valuable information to make sure that you're getting your water into that range before you start putting stuff in the tank.
Right, yeah, maximum efficacy for the products. You want to be a lot lower pH than what generally we see with our water.
But that really varies from product to product too.
It does. Yeah, it does. It's something we have to pay attention to.
Right.
So typically speaking, I mean, it can be as simple as throwing ammonium sulfate in the tank first.
Okay.
Or something like that, where you're just naturally driving the pH down a little bit. But some guys have gone as far as to use buffering agents and things like that just to get it where it needs to be.
What would be a buffering agent that you might use? What is that?
BASF formulations. So the one thing I wanted to add is that.
Isn't it great when we might play along
You're
and
welcome, by
I
the
just
way.
throw that softball right over the middle?
We work on our formulations to buffer them into a pretty wide range of different pH scenarios that someone
Okay.
might find themselves. And so that's why I guess for me, I tend to focus more on what's happening with irrigation, because for the most part, we can rely on fungicides in particular to be well behaved from a 3 to a 9 buffer range or pH
Right.
range, which is really nice. But where it can really get you into trouble is with herbicides, and it doesn't change anything with your irrigation water. So we do try to formulate keeping that in mind, because water scarcity is an issue and high EC and all the different things people are dealing with. Just make sure that when you put products into the tank with a lot of other partners, because we know you love to do that, that things will behave a bit better.
Okay. What other cultural things are you doing, particularly for rapid blight?
It's generally plant health in
It
general.
is? So it's not necessarily a mowing height thing, or
No, it totally is. Yeah, I think it all adds up. Yeah, definitely. So as the season progresses, we get into natural stress periods anyway. So we're looking at raising cutting heights after 4th of July a little bit. Generally, irrigation principles are a huge issue. Learning that deep and infrequent isn't just about driving roots. It's about how you manage the amount of water in the root zone on a day-to-day basis.
Explain that for me a little bit.
Well, even like POA greens in the Northwest, we didn't worry too much about it because it's like the water quality is great. POA is generally happy most of the year anyway. So it's if you're running 3 to 6 minutes a night and a little touch-up hand watering in the morning, it's no big deal. If you do that down here, you're going to have dead grass by August 15th. Right. So, we'll run, 15 to 20 minutes every 4 to 5 days, even on, short-rooted POA, just to help manage that water in the top couple of inches and get, any of that nasty water down further.
Right.
The other things we'll do is like Jim mentioned, monthly venting programs. Our top dressing regiments are pretty
let them
strong.
breathe a little bit.
Just general good agronomic practices, air, water, and sunlight,
What a concept.
Manage the food properly too, nitrogen levels, not getting them overdone, but not too little,
Yep.
It's all that stuff that adds up to getting through a summer here.
That's a lot of what you're making recommendations about. How have you seen that changing, not just with the ups and downs of drought, but also with climate change and extreme weather? It seems to be, I live in Cleveland, Ohio, and we went from 30 below on Wednesday to about 52 degrees on Saturday. And I assure you that's not standard. So I assume you're seeing some version of that too. What are you thinking, okay, 5 years, 10 years down the road, how are we going to see that present itself for turf managers?
Well, I think one of the things, the products of climate change is things are happening different times, and
Right.
the superintendents have to react accordingly in terms of that. There's just, specifically oftentimes like weed management, you're basing your programs, maybe a pre-emergence application on the calendar, and Mother Nature's not cooperating
Right.
the way she did, and so I think adjustments need to be made accordingly.
Did
in
you
that
guys have a
regard.
sedge grass explosion out here last year like the rest of the country did? Did you see that? It's probably not as big of a thing. We in the Midwest, we'd really never seen anything like this. And the sedge just came out in late season, August. Boom, came up everywhere in home lawns, golf courses everywhere. Have you seen equivalent things like that?
Somewhat, yeah. I'm one of the questions I often get at various times of the year from various trade publications, like, what are you seeing? What are you predicting this year in terms of weeds? And my response usually is we have such a diverse climate that there's no one particular weed, I guess, outside of POA anyway. And like I said, a majority of the superintendents are trying to keep it alive and not necessarily get rid of that. But I would say that, and then you mentioned sedge. I think there's certain areas, the Coachella Valley, are low desert. Superintendents battle that, especially when they're coming out of of the overseeding season, transitioning back to Bermuda grass, and oftentimes there's a lot of sedge present. They got to deal with those issues as well as what effects the transition might have on their Bermuda grass turf.
Okay. Final thoughts, and particularly with an eye on rapid blight, as you see these programs and these recommendations. What should superintendents be considering as they decide what my disease management program is going to be with rapid blight as my number one target? How are you guiding them to make their selections for their program for 2019 and beyond?
Well, for rapid blight, first of all, it's one of those diseases that's not easily identifiable. It's typically a qualified lab needs to be involved.
So good sampling and sending good samples.
And, right?
Yep.
And I've watched. I think many in the audience know Dr. Larry Stoll, and he's put together a nice video. Put together a nice video on how to properly identify that pathogen, but it's not easy. He certainly makes it look that way in the video, but I know proper identification, and then certainly your management in terms of your irrigation, the leaching aspect that we talked about, this aspect of turf health and nutrients, biostimulants being a part of that scenario, and then of course when you're certain that you have that disease, using the proper fungicide, because this is probably one of the pathogens where there's just not that many fungicides available that are going to effectively control it. So best to know that you're dealing with that first before you try to manage it, especially with fungicides.
Right. So Jen, your job is to be the counselor and the coach and the helper, but you're also the person who's an expert on BASF products. So when you hear that, what in your mind, what does that program feel like to you for somebody like Josh or somebody that's facing this rapid blight program? What's your prescription going to be?
Josh and I did not talk prior to this, but
okay,
it is based on a holiday.
That's why we're giving him the last word.
Okay, good. It is based on a holiday spray program because that does capture from Memorial Day out through the end of summer the key times that you're going to have rapid blight pressure. But it's also doing what he talked about of recognizing the other diseases that are happening there. So you use your most efficacious products, Insignia, Lexicon, other pyraclostrobin-based products during the time you have rapid blight pressure, and then building programs that cover all the other diseases and bring in not only the best chemistries from BASF for that disease pressure, but other things that are doing well in Jim's research programs and other things that we know throughout the country are really performing. So when we write programs, we try to be balanced and not only steward our own products and our own modes of action, but also the other products that are available that are really going to result in the best quality grass.
Right. Last word, pal. You got pulled in here to help us to share this information, and again, you've got a lot of things going on in your world. This seems like something that if you have the right partner and you have the right prescription, you don't have to lose a lot of sleep about. So, what are you going to do? What are you going to if somebody says, "Okay, Josh, what are you doing on this program to control rapid blight?" What are you going to tell everybody?
Exactly what Jen said. This has been foundationally since coming back to California, just having always kind of kept up on the research. There's really only one option, one thing we do talk about, which is the holiday sprays. Insignia is obviously, even going back to Frank Wong at Riverside and some of the that guy. Some of the research that he did on rapid blight, Insignia has always been a great performer. So the fact that we've got the combo product that is such a broad spectrum that can cover us for a lot of these other things, it's a great foundational thing to build your program around. And then, just as you get into different parts of the season, you're paying attention to weather, you're paying attention to, what the grass is telling you, and just kind of going off of that. If you've got that foundation down and you're a good water manager and you're walking your greens every day and you're paying attention, you should be fine.
Perfect. That's the perfect place to wrap this up. I want to thank all three of you for your candor and your insights. I also want to encourage everybody here in the state of California and elsewhere to support this man. There just isn't enough good research and education being provided. Unfortunately, The West Coast it's a hard environment for our friends in academia. So I hope that y'all will continue to support Dr. Baird and what he does. And in the meantime, I want to thank all three of you for being here. And I hope you have a great season. And I hope to come visit you soon and come see this fabulous new golf course that you're at. So thank you very much. Thanks for coming.